Why God uses the dark chosen ones as his secret shadow agents. I want you to look around the world today and tell me honestly, do you feel like the people who speak the loudest about truth, light, and goodness are always the ones acting in alignment with it? Or have you noticed, like I have, that sometimes the most profound awakenings come not from saints in robes, but from the broken, the bruised, the misunderstood? Let me take you on a journey into one of the greatest divine paradoxes humanity has never truly dared to understand: why God, the divine creator, often chooses his shadowed ones, those who seem farthest from the light, to carry out his most secret and sacred missions. Most of us are taught that to serve God we must be pure, clean, above reproach. But what if I told you that the greatest warriors of light are sometimes cloaked in the deepest shadows, not to deceive, but to protect, not to hide, but to endure? See, the world has a certain predictable rhythm to it. We're conditioned to believe that light is always good and darkness is always evil. But that's an illusion for the spiritually immature. In truth, light without wisdom can blind, darkness without guidance can consume. But in the hands of the divine, both light and dark become tools, dual forces, yin and yang. And sometimes when the battle is too covert, too dangerous, too subtle for the ordinary soul, God doesn't send the saints, he sends the shadow agents.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Let me ask you something deeply uncomfortable. Have you ever felt like you were born into darkness? Not just external suffering, but inner torment? Like your soul carried a weight you didn't earn, a rage you didn't choose, a sadness you couldn't explain? What if that wasn't punishment? What if it was preparation? What if that darkness wasn't a flaw, but a forge? I've met people who've crawled out of addiction, prison, abuse, and self-hate, who now walk with a spiritual fire no textbook preacher could match. Why? Because they've seen the underworld and chose to come back. They've been to the hells of human experience and survived. And isn't that what Jesus did? Isn't that what Buddha saw under the Bodhi tree? Isn't that what every true spiritual warrior endures? Not just light, not just serenity, but confrontation with the deepest, most terrifying aspects of existence, and still choosing love. You see, God doesn't waste pain, he repurposes it, and some souls came here not to be saved from the darkness, but to master it, to infiltrate it, to become immune to its seductions and use that immunity to set others free. These are the dark chosen ones, the secret shadow agents of God. They're not here to be worshipped or pitied. They're here to do the work no one else can see, and sometimes no one else can bear. Some of them are in prisons right now. Some are working in politics. Some are hiding in creative industries, disguised as entertainers or artists. Others are living quietly, their past too heavy to share, but their intentions pure. They walk among us, often unnoticed, misunderstood, even hated. But they aren't here for applause. They are here for the mission. And the mission is sacred. Let's get personal. I'll tell you something I've never said publicly. I used to wonder why I was drawn to the edge, why I couldn't just be content with the surface level spirituality, the love and light inly stuff. I wanted to know what was behind the curtain. I wanted to know why some people were born into horror and others into comfort. Why some prayers seem to go unanswered, why good people suffer, why evil sometimes thrives. And the answers didn't come wrapped in golden light. They came in silence, in pain, in loss, in watching people break down and choose to get up again. That's when I realized the true agents of the divine aren't always clean, they're scarred, and their scars are sacred. There is a hidden elite in the spiritual hierarchy, and they don't wear robes. They wear trauma. They wear decades of silent endurance. And God trusts them not because they're flawless, but because they've been through the fire and didn't lose their soul. Do you understand how deep that is? Do you realize what it means to walk through hell and still choose to love, to serve, to protect others from going through what you did? This isn't about glorifying suffering, it's about honoring the purpose behind it. Not all pain is divine, but some pain is a divine invitation, a calling, a test. And if you're listening to this and you feel like you've been marked by something dark, something heavy, something that's made other people afraid of you or confused by you, I want you to stop and ask yourself, what if God isn't trying to punish me? What if He's recruiting me? The light workers are visible. They're meant to be. But the shadow agents? They move in silence. They're the ones who can sit with the suicidal, the angry, the addicted, not with judgment, but with knowing. They're the ones who can walk into a room full of demons and not flinch, because they've already faced their own. Now, I want to ask you a question that might change your life. What if your deepest wound is the very thing that qualifies you to serve in God's highest mission? What if your shame is your sword? What if your scars are your armor? What if you've been trained in darkness so you could fight for others in it? You don't have to be famous, you don't have to be accepted, you don't even have to be understood. But if you've ever felt like you were made for something different, something that doesn't fit the mold of good or holy or normal, that's not your weakness, that's your calling card. That's the divine whispering, I see you, I made you, and I have a mission only you can do. The dark chosen ones are not evil, they are alchemical. They are the bridge between the seen and the unseen. They are the ones who've tasted rage and still chose forgiveness, who've known despair and still chose hope, who've been tempted by power and still chose humility. These are the warriors hidden in plain sight, and God uses them not because He needs them to be perfect, but because He knows they'll never quit the mission. So, if you're still here, still listening, still breathing, despite everything you've been through, maybe this message isn't just a video. Maybe it's your spiritual briefing. Maybe this is your wake-up call. God may not need you to be an angel, but He needs you to be real. And if you've got the courage to accept it, if you've got the heart to serve in the shadows, then maybe, just maybe, you were never broken. You were just chosen differently. The hidden ones, why the most powerful servants of God are often the most misunderstood. Have you ever wondered why the ones who seem closest to spiritual fire are often the ones society fears, mocks, or abandons? The most powerful servants of God don't always walk with halos over their heads. In fact, more often than not, they stagger through life with haunted eyes, unspoken stories, and a quiet strength that comes not from being untouched by darkness, but from surviving it. These are not the people you see preaching from pulpits or trending on spiritual hashtags. These are the ones who disappear into the background, who speak in riddles, who carry an intensity that makes others uncomfortable. But they are not lost. They are hidden by design. God hides his strongest agents in plain sight. Why? Because the mission requires it. The dark, chosen ones must learn to walk without applause, to serve without recognition. Their reward is not fame, it's impact. Their validation is not external, it's divine. And because they don't fit the spiritual stereotype, they are often misunderstood, feared, or even rejected by the very people they came to help. But that too is part of the mission. You can only walk through the shadows if you're not addicted to the light of approval. These hidden ones are forged in solitude. That's why they often feel isolated, even in crowds. It's not because they're unloved, it's because their frequency is tuned for a mission most people aren't built to comprehend. The conversations they crave are rare, the depth they bring is intimidating, and their presence alone can stir up people's buried pain. That's the price of carrying divine fire in a human vessel. It burns, it purifies, it transforms, but it also attracts resistance. Let me ask you something. Have you ever entered a room and felt like people could sense something in you? Something they couldn't name but couldn't ignore? Maybe they looked away, maybe they acted strangely around you. Maybe you've even been told you're too intense, too serious, or too much. That's not a flaw. That's energy. That's spiritual weight. The hidden ones carry the weight of generations. They are the embodiment of ancestral prayers, karmic codes, and divine blueprints. And that kind of presence shakes things up. People often think that spiritual power looks like serenity and smiles, but true spiritual power can be quiet and fierce. It can look like saying no. It can look like walking away. It can look like confronting evil when no one else will. That's why the dark chosen ones are misunderstood. Their love doesn't always look soft. Sometimes it looks like a sword. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like silent silence. Sometimes it looks like standing alone while others cheer for the wrong side. But that's what makes them chosen. They don't follow the crowd, they follow the call. And that call often comes at a cost. The hidden ones are tested in ways others aren't. Their betrayals are deeper. Their losses are harder. Their inner battles are more brutal. Why? Because their mission is bigger. Because they're not just healing themselves, they're healing timelines. They're not just breaking their own chains, they're breaking ancestral curses. And that kind of spiritual work, it's messy, it's lonely, it's misunderstood, but it is also glorious. Some of you listening right now know exactly what I'm talking about. You've felt it your whole life. That sense that you were different, not better, just different. You saw things others didn't, felt things they ignored. You tried to fit in, but the mask never stayed on for long. Because you weren't meant to blend in, you were meant to awaken. What if your weirdness was your wisdom in disguise? What if your intensity was your medicine? What if your silence was your prayer? The world needs the hidden ones now more than ever, because we're living in a time of mass illusion, a time when truth is rare and manipulation is common, and only those who have walked through the fire can tell the difference. Only those who've seen both light and dark can navigate the shadows without getting lost. So if you feel like you're not seen, not understood, not celebrated, don't despair. You weren't sent here for the spotlight. You are sent here for the soul work. You are sent here to hold the line when others fall, to speak truth when others are silent, to love fiercely when the world is afraid, and to walk humbly even when your spirit carries the weight of 1,000 lifetimes. You are not broken, you are built differently. You are not behind, you are being prepared. And you are not alone, the hidden ones are everywhere, quietly holding space, silently changing lives, invisibly shifting the tides of history. And one day, the world will look back and realize that it wasn't the loudest voices that saved us. It was the ones who whispered to the soul, "Keep going." The sacred rebellion, how the dark chosen ones dismantle evil from within. There is a rebellion happening right now, not the kind that makes headlines or waves flags, but one that moves beneath the surface of reality. It is sacred, silent and invisible to the untrained eye, and at the heart of it are the dark chosen ones. These are the souls God has appointed not to escape the system, but to enter it, to infiltrate it, and to dismantle it. Not with violence, but with presence, not by shouting, but by shifting. This rebellion is not against people, it's against the spiritual machinery of corruption, deception, and fear that has gripped this planet for far too long. Most people think the enemy of God wears horns and breathes fire, but the real enemy is more subtle. It wears suits, it hides in institutions, it speaks the language of control, it thrives on fear, division, and illusion. And that's why God doesn't just send prophets, He sends agents, shadow agents, those who can walk through the corridors of power without losing their soul, those who can read the codes, speak the language, navigate the darkness, and yet not become it. To dismantle evil, you must understand it. You must have walked near its fire without being consumed. You must have tasted its seduction and chosen truth instead. And that's what makes the dark chosen ones so terrifying to the forces of darkness. They can't be bought. They can't be blackmailed. They don't flinch under pressure. Why? Because they've already faced worse. They've already been through inner hells that make outer threats look like whispers. And here's the part most people miss. These chosen ones often don't look spiritual in the traditional sense. They may not quote scriptures or wear beads. They might even cuss, question, or challenge the very systems religious people hold sacred. But don't be fooled. Their rebellion is not against God, it's against the false gods, against the systems that use God's name to control, to guilt, to manipulate. The dark chosen ones have one allegiance, truth, and they'll burn down every illusion to protect it. I've seen them in all walks of life. The lawyer who defends the innocent when no one else will. The artist who embeds divine codes inside their work to awaken the sleeping. The teacher who plants seeds in young minds, knowing it may take decades for them to bloom. The activist who risks everything to call out corruption, even if it costs them their career. These are not rebels without a cause. They are rebels with the highest cause, liberation of the human soul. But here's the hard truth. This sacred rebellion is lonely. It doesn't come with applause. Most of the time it comes with resistance, betrayal, or exile. People don't understand why you won't just play along, why you question everything, why you challenge authority. But the hidden ones know in their bones. They weren't born to conform. They were born to disrupt, to expose, to illuminate. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like your whole life was preparing you for something you couldn't quite name? Like every injustice you witnessed, every pain you endured, every lie you saw through, it was all pointing you toward a mission? That's not your imagination. That's your blueprint activating. That's the divine whispering, it's time. This sacred rebellion doesn't need permission. It doesn't wait for consensus. It moves when truth demands it. And if you're part of it, you already know because your soul won't let you rest. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't pretend the world is fine. You can't sit in silence while systems devour souls. That unrest in you, that fire, that refusal to bow, that's not defiance, that's design. And the irony? The very system the dark chosen ones are dismantling is the one that calls them dangerous. But they don't fear the label, they wear it like armor, because they know the truth. Only those who threaten the lie are called threats, and only those who carry the real light are accused of being dark. So if you feel like an outsider, if you've been rejected by both the world and the church, if you've been told you're too much or too intense or too radical, maybe that's because you were never meant to fit in. Maybe you were meant to break through. Maybe you're not a misfit. Maybe you're a secret weapon in God's rebellion. The final initiation, how the shadow agent becomes the guardian of light. There comes a moment in every dark chosen one's journey when the fire no longer burns them, it becomes them. This is the final initiation, not a ceremony with incense and chanting, but a sacred collapse of everything they once thought they were. Their false identities, their wounds masquerading as strength, their need to be understood, all stripped away, because only when the ego dies can the true guardian rise. And make no mistake, that is what the shadow agent becomes, not just a survivor, not just a warrior, but a guardian of light. You see, the whole journey, the pain, the exile, the rebellion, it wasn't just about breaking systems, it was about becoming a vessel pure enough to carry divine power, yet human enough to remember suffering. That balance is what makes them unstoppable, because they don't use their light to boast, they use it to build, to serve, to stand at the gates of humanity's darkest places and say, "Not on my watch." The final initiation does not crown the shadow agent with glory, it crowns them with responsibility. It marks the moment when their power is no longer for them, it's for the people, for the silent ones, the broken, the lost, the angry, the forgotten. Because the dark chosen one knows they've been all those things. And so they protect others not from pity, but from knowing, from deep empathy, from divine memory. This stage of the journey is terrifying because it demands total surrender. No more proving, no more hiding, no more pretending to be small. The guardian must walk in their full power, not to dominate, but to defend. They become the lighthouse in the storm, not because they asked for the role, but because no one else could hold that kind of light without going blind. At this point, God no longer speaks to them in vague signs. The communication becomes direct. Intuitive, silent but loud. The guardian doesn't need to ask for guidance. They become the guidance. Their life itself becomes a message. Their presence becomes protection. And when they walk into a room, the atmosphere shifts. Not because they seek attention, but because they carry truth. Raw, unfiltered, undeniable truth. But here's the mystery. The guardian doesn't take credit. They know they are the instrument, not the music. Their strength is borrowed, their wisdom channeled, their courage gifted. They bow just as deeply as they stand tall, because they remember the nights they begged God to take the pain away, and now they carry that pain as purpose. Let me ask you one final question. What if everything you've been through was leading you to this moment? Not to be healed, but to become the healer. Not to escape the darkness, but to light the path through it. What if your life, with all its chaos and contradictions, was the exact formula needed to become a divine guardian? This is the truth most people aren't ready for. The ones who walk through the deepest hells become the most trusted by heaven because they can't be broken anymore. They've already been broken and rebuilt, and now they walk with a power that isn't loud but undeniable, a power that doesn't need to conquer because it already overcame. The journey of the Dark Chosen One ends not in a throne, but in service. Not in being worshipped, but in watching over. They become the quiet protectors of the sacred, the invisible shields of the innocent, the final line between chaos and harmony, and they do it without applause, without recognition, because they were never in it for themselves. So if you feel that calling in your soul, that quiet knowing that you've been shaped by something bigger than you, for something greater than you, this is your confirmation. You are not lost. You are not cursed. You are not too late. You are being initiated. You are becoming the guardian, and the world needs you now more than ever.